Hi, Hammad. Thank you so much for joining us today. Everyone else, welcome to this session. Hammad is the co-founder for Pakistani Stores, which is an aggregator for it's a price comparison website, and he's also the co-founder for Alphaventure. He has worked with some of the fastest growing startups in the country, including Dawai, Bag Gallery, and is responsible for skyrocketing their sales and some of the most successful campaigns they have created so far. So I'll giving it over to Hammad, and he can brief you all about what he has been doing.
Thank you so much, Natasha, for the kind introduction. Hi guys, I'm Hammad. I've been around in the industry for the last decade or so. When Natasha reached out to me, I told her that we are going to keep this session interactive. I'll have a presentation which is basically some talking points, but it's going to be more about my experiences in the industry, what I've learned, working with a couple of companies, and then maybe I can start with that. Natasha, can I share my screen?
Sure, you can share.
Can you see my screen?
Yes, it's visible now.
Awesome. So I'll keep it very brief, even though it's 45 minutes to 1 hour session, but I'll keep it brief, keep it simple, candid and casual. So I'll start with my experience in the industry, the companies that I've worked with, and things that I've learned from those companies. So I run a company called Alphaventure. We work with a couple of VC funded startups in Pakistan, including Dawai, Wakil Online, Bag Gallery, groups like Fatma Group, Novacare. So a lot of big names that has been in the industry for a while. Also, before starting Alphaventure, I was co-founder and chief technology officer at a company called Khareed. We built this B2B solution, software solution that we sold to JW Group, National Bank, PEL. So a lot of those blue chip companies. So having built systems in the past from scratch, I have, in the last decade or so, I've worked with a couple of companies in different industries, from healthcare to beauty to e-commerce to software as service to banks. So I thought that it would be interesting to share my experiences with all those companies, because most of those companies have similar experiences. Natasha, should I move forward? Do you guys have any questions about the things that I've done, the companies that I've worked with, or the things that we are doing? How far do you have any?
I think what we generally do is have questions at the end, so you can go on, so your flow doesn't break, and we'll have questions at the end.
Awesome, thank you. So I'll start with a basic idea on the that I have my experience with. And usually people, when they hear about tech, they have something in mind where they want to maybe focus too much on the technology side of things, but usually it's more important about the fundamentals. Why are you doing things? What's your purpose to do things? And initially, when I consult with companies, I start with the purpose. And more often than not, people are not very clear on why are they starting a company. So if your idea is to just raise funds, then you build a completely different company. There's also a human factor where people want to prove to people. For example, I've dealt with a couple of clients in the past. Inherently, what they want to do, they want to prove to their fathers or maybe to their ex that they are doing well in life. But generally, it's very subjective. And usually, what has worked for me is I usually ask them to write down that purpose on why are you building this company, instead of starting with a problem and then you may care about that problem, you may not care about the problem. But I usually feel the fundamental purpose of your business existence is also very important. For example, if you're doing it just for the sake of validation, that validation may not be there tomorrow. And then you'll be stuck with a company or with a startup that you don't really care about. And then usually it's a big problem in the local industry. You want to do things just because other people are doing it. So my idea is you start with the fundamental and then you say, why am I starting this company? And you write this down, and you can't change it as you like, because So there's no right or wrong answer to it, but generally it's more about being honest to yourself on why are you doing it. And this actually drives your company. So if you're building a company for a VC, then your goals will be completely different. Then you may not want to focus too much on your bottom line. You may want to focus more on GMV. You may want to focus more on connections. You may want to focus more on PR. If you're building a company just for the sake of profits, then your goal will be completely different. So purpose, I feel, is one of the key pillar when you're starting a company or when you're running a business, but usually generally the most overlooked attribute when you start a company. Then there's also an element what I've seen with a lot of these new startups where you say, okay, I am working on this thing, but I'm not losing a lot of money and it's okay. But what I have usually felt is there's also a very big opportunity cost. So maybe you may have a startup that's not burning a lot of money in 3 years, 4 years, but there's also an opportunity cost attached to it. You can do a lot more things, a lot more interesting, you can solve a lot more interesting problems if you have the right mindset, because the key attribute that you have, or the one thing that you have in your control is your time, and then you don't want to spend that time on things that might not mature. So always have that thought process in mind that if I'm working on it, the most expensive resource that I'm spending on it is time. Money may not be the right way to measure things. So this is what I felt about opportunity. And then also another important part is usually. Imran, can you hear me? Can you guys hear me properly?
Yes, we can hear you. I guess Imran had an issue with his microphone.
Not an issue. Another important part that I've felt is usually measurement technique, or the way you measure your success is not clearly defined, and then you keep on changing goalposts. So with a lot of these new startups, you'll see they start with one goal, but if they can't achieve that goal, they'll change the goalpost, and then just to make yourself feel better, you might come up with a completely different measurement technique. You might end up with a completely new set of success definitions for you. But generally, for your own self, it's super important to have that measurement technique in mind, and then you try to be as consistent as possible, because you want to have that impression where you don't want to, maybe if you're going to fail, at least fail fast. If you're going to change your measurement technique, or if you're going to change your definition of success and failure, often you end up in a cycle where you will just be making yourself happier in a short run, but in long run, you might not end up where you want to be. And the last part from the fundamentals, usually what I feel is not everyone has the privilege to have fun, but have fun as much as you can in this journey, because one of the most important work, or one of the cool stuff that I've done is usually with the people that I love working with. I had fun doing those things. So people usually overlook fun, but if you have the opportunity, if you can find something that you genuinely care about, that you genuinely have motivation to do, it's always preferred than something that you do just for the sake of money, or something that you feel, okay, you might raise fund and then you will have fun. If you're not having fun pre-fundraising, you're not going to have fun post-fundraising. So these were the few fundamentals that I have worked with, and I feel these are usually most overlooked elements, where we don't focus too much on the human side of things, but we are too mechanical in terms of how we want to maybe start a business. Any questions? I know, Natasha, we may want to have questions after this presentation, but I would like if you guys can, maybe if you have any questions, feel free to ask them right away, so it's a little more engaging.
Hammad, there's a question in the chat box. Sajid is asking what type of measurement for KPIs?
Okay, so generally I'll talk about KPIs later in the slides, but generally my idea is, if you're going to have a measurement technique, if you're going to say, this is my definition of success. For example, for some people, it might be raising funds. And for some people, it might be reaching X revenue goal. So you can come up with your own definition of success, But my idea is once you decide that, you stick with it and try not to change it frequently. So you can have any KPI, we'll focus more on the KPI side, but it's more about having it consistent than just changing it based on what you feel today. So you may have a goal to reach certain revenue, but if you're not hitting those revenue goals, you might say, okay, I had X number of users, but those were not your initial target KPIs. So my idea is once you decide on those KPIs, keep it consistent and then build failure and success based on that. Sajid, I hope this answers your question. If you have any question, feel free to write it in the chat. I felt this is important to actually share this in the presentation, because if you don't have these fundamentals right, you can maybe build a rockstar team, but you'll end up being confused on what you want to do with the startup or with the company. Then I have a very simple model in mind when I work with companies. So over time, I've worked in textile, I've worked in real estate industry, I've worked in software service industry, I've worked with banks, I've worked with high-paced e-commerce companies, and now we are working with a few companies in the US that primarily focuses on design. So they make websites for companies like competitors to SpaceX, Ferrari, Ritz-Carlton, and we are a consultant to them. So we are solving a lot of these interesting problems, but primarily it all boils down to two problems or two type of things. Regardless of what business you are running, generally you are either solving a problem of revenue generation or efficiencies. And there's no, at least for me, there is a third category, but that's usually not that significant. So usually my idea is I structure the problem in a way that's more manageable, and you build a framework around it. So for me, these are the two major problems that our company usually solves. First is usually, are you solving the right problem? And if you're solving the right problem, I mean, let's take example of Pakistan. There are a lot of problems and there are a lot of solutions there, but is this the right problem to solve? Because when you go to VCs, you can say my total addressable market is 240 million, but are those people actually willing to pay? Do they have the money to pay? So these are the tough questions that you have to ask in terms of when you decide on a problem, because it's very easy to define a wrong problem or wrong target addressable market. But you start with, am I solving the right problem? Am I solving the problem of revenue generation, or am I solving the problem of efficiency? Usually, the first part is usually cool, and you want to focus more on revenue generation. Most of the companies that you made in your career wants to focus more on revenue generation than building efficiencies. And this is the area I think that you guys will probably need a lot of help in. I usually have 4 to 5 key areas that I focus on. Are you building a brand? So in terms of brand building, Natasha or anyone, do you guys feel brand building is absolutely necessary for any startup, or what are your thoughts on brand and why do we build brands?
Very essential for startups. For example, I was talking to the startups about, recent brands that have really made an impact. And one of the most relevant examples that everybody has on their mind is Sada Pay right now, right?
Yeah.
Sada Pay's marketing is primarily word of mouth. They don't do anything else, right? So the startups have a lot to learn from this, because there was a time when Facebook was it. People thought that there's a one size fits all strategy for marketing.
Yeah.
Same post on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter. Now we are seeing a completely different type of roadmap, right? You have brands interacting with each other on Twitter that gets them engagement. Kareem and Zomato, Kareem and everybody else, literally Kareem and everybody else during World Cup finals or everything.
Yeah.
And you have Sada Pay, whose whole brand is people, being very fascinated by the card and putting up without being prompted to do it.
Yeah.
So the brand that you build, your whole brand needs to have a voice, right? Because people associate brand with a voice, and it's not a standalone thing anymore. कि बस ये है. if people think of Sada Pay, they think of this, cheeky brand. If they think of Kareem, Kareem is extremely cheeky. So I think brand identity is very important right now.
Okay, and if I ask you, can you survive or can you run a business without a brand? Is it possible? What would your opinion on that might be?
No, it's really hard to run business without a brand. Even if you have a good customer base, you can't just rely on that कि भाई हमारे पास इतने customers हैं, मैं आगे इतना ज़्यादा effort डालने की ज़रूरत नहीं है marketing पे, brand building पे, funding भी है, क्या ज़रूरत है?
I agree, but there's also this. So when we are in this startup ecosystem, we usually have this tunnel vision that brand building is important, but there are markets where you don't actually need brands. So for example, I'm sure in Hyderabad when you see these shopping centers, or most people where they shop from locally, वो किसी brand के पास नहीं जाते होंगे, वो किसी local shopkeeper के पास जाते हैं. And there are only a few people जो एक क्लास है आपकी जो ब्रांड के पास जाती है और ब्रांड से बाय करती है, but there's also this huge commodity market. For example, there are Chinese sellers on Amazon जो millions of dollars का turn around करते हैं without building a brand. They just make accessories. उनके लिए you don't need a brand क्योंकि usually brand building in itself is a conscious effort that you have to put in resources. And sometimes you want to be in that commodity market where you just want to compete on price. So for example, if you go to any local market in Hyderabad, you see you don't focus primarily on brands. Instead, you deal in that commodity market where you want to buy the highest quality for lowest price. So if you are building a business, it can happen where you don't actually need a brand in short term and you can do really well. But it's more about having the resources to actually build that brand because you can't choose one of these. I'll give some examples in the slides further. Then what usually you have in mind, मेरा sales framework जो है, how am I driving sales? Am I using the right sales framework? People usually focus on sales funnel, conversion strategies, but it's very important to have that sales funnel in mind when you are doing this. So I'll focus on each of these items in the next slides. Usually, so if you go to Philip Kotler, which is one of the most renowned marketing guru, the idea is the art of marketing is the art of brand building. If you're not building a brand, then you are a commodity, and low cost producer is always the winner in commodity marketplace. But this notion that we have to build a brand, it's usually too tunnel vision. Sometimes you don't have to build brands, and if you are building a brand, then you have to build that brand. You have to make conscious effort. Just to give you an idea, there's this model called Keller's brand equity, which helps you identify how people perceive your brand. For example, have you ever watched a Coke ad जिसमें एक बंदा seaside पे अकेले Coke पी रहा है? Have you ever seen an ad जिसमें Coke में कोई बंदा sad है या lonely है and वो Coke पी रहा है? Have any of you watched any of these ads? Natasha, maybe you can answer that.
Sorry, I think there was some glitch with I couldn't hear your voice. Could you repeat that?
Yeah. So I was saying, have you ever seen a Coke ad where you have a lonely guy sitting at a seaside and maybe having a Coke?
I don't think I recall seeing that ad.
Okay. Because Coke's whole brand identity is built around festivities, community, happiness. And it's not just randomly they woke up one day and decided that ये हमारी brand identity होगी. You have to make conscious effort to actually build those ideas. For example, when you see Nike, you don't see them selling shoes. It's more about you can do it. They sell you that perception of success.
A lifestyle. It's a lifestyle, right?
Lifestyle.
With Nike shoes, you can achieve anything. You can do this. You can be an athlete.
Exactly. When you see a shampoo ad, you'll never see someone sitting alone and then talking how good this shampoo is. It's more about you sell a bottle in a dream. Or when you see ads for insurance, it's never about you'll get X money, but they'll try to sell you fair. And these are the conscious choices that you have to make to build a brand. But then it's a conscious effort. It requires a lot of resources in terms of how you want to position yourself, how you want to build that brand. You can't do both. Generally, what I have seen is you try to go into that commodity market and then you want to build brand, but then you end up doing both of these things in a mediocre way. So my idea is if you're doing at least pick one. If you're going in this market, if you're in a commodity play, just focus more on efficiency and then cost. Forget about brand building for now. And then once you are big enough to make a brand, then make a brand, but don't try to do both. I think
Okay,
you
so I
guys.
have a question. Yeah, sorry. So, for example, right now we have all these startups, right? And
Yeah.
let's take Khata books, for example, right? All of them are free.
Yeah.
So they don't have any leverage over one another because all of them
Yeah.
are free. So it's literally a choice of, I think, whichever one you come across first. And so for these kind of businesses that are not monetizing themselves right now, and they
Yeah.
have a lot of competition in the market, how
Yeah.
do they differentiate themselves from other businesses? What extra mile do they need to go to?
Okay. So first, I think we have established they are not in a commodity business. They are not selling you things. If they were in a commodity business, then they would have focused more on pricing. But all of these apps are free, so they're not making any money, right? Yeah. And then when you see their marketing strategy, I generally, so for example, there are a few apps. Khata app hai, then you have Easy Khata, DG Khata, Book, a lot of these startups. Even if they do a reasonably well brand building, my question would be: is this a good enough business to get? Is this the right problem? Or have you built a solution and then you are now trying to find problems? I'll give you an example. There was an activity in Punjab where they distributed tablets to school students, government school students. And then they were looking for problems to solve through those tablets. So sometimes just for the sake of raising funds, you make solutions and then you go the other way around. I generally disagree with this approach. And I think Khata, all of these Khata apps are now looking for problems and they've already built the solution. So in terms of brand building, all of them are doing reasonably well. But the kind of problem that they are solving is the harder part. Okay, some of them are now trying to get into the payments play. Some of them are now trying to get into the B2B lead generation play. But now they are looking for problems instead of building solutions for those problems. I hope this answers your question. Natasha, do you have anything to add to this?
No, I think someone was speaking, but I couldn't hear their voice clearly. Does anybody have a question?
Yeah. Then I have a very simple sales framework. Usually, when you see people in marketing, they'll teach you कि आप Facebook ad चला दें और ROI को आपने करना है, ROS को improve करना है. But I have a different approach to this, and this has worked really well for us. I usually focus on these three key elements where you want to start with the audience, because most of the times when you work with startups, I think in NIC as well, you must have met a lot of startups. When you ask them what's your target audience, they're like, "Pura Pakistan हमारी audience." And you know exactly कि ये हो नहीं सकता कि पूरा पाकिस्तान आपकी audience हो. You have to narrow it down just to give you an idea on how minor things can make a difference. When we were working with Bag Gallery, what we realized, even if people have same purchasing power, अगर कोई बंदा remote area KPK से order कर रहा है, तो वो 5-6 products एक साथ order करेगा. लेकिन अगर कोई बंदा हैदराबाद, कराची, लाहौर, इस्लामाबाद से order कर रहा है, तो वो 1 या 2 product भी order कर लेगा. क्योंकि you have that mindset कि मैं बाजार जा रहा हूँ, चलो बाजार से 4 चीजें लेके आऊंगा. But when you are in Karachi, when you are in Hyderabad, you know कि मैं बाहर जाके एक चीज भी लेके आ सकता. So just based on that mindset, you can build your audience के how is my audience different? I mean, it would be surprising for you that there are people in Islam in Multan who have higher spending power than people sitting in Islamabad, Karachi, and Lahore, most of these major. But when you see Multan as a city, when you're a performance marketer, आप कहेंगे वो significant enough नहीं है for me. So my idea is you focus more on narrowing down that audience and why you want to target that audience. So you build that persona कि कौन लोग हैं. There's also an element where if you see US and these developed countries, you see you have CPC of $3, $5, $10 there. Pakistan के अंदर you have a CPC of 2 rupees, 1 rupee at max. But eventually, the more competition is going to come in, then the CPC will keep on getting higher. And then what you will have to do, you'll have to be hyper local, super targeted to stay competent or in the competition. Otherwise, you'll be burning a lot of money with very little ROI because it's diminishing each day based on competition. So audience is I think one of the critical part when you build or when you use any sales funnel. Then there's also a message part. I have a very different take on the message part, and I'll maybe connected with the story part. Have you watched Dune? How many of you have watched Dune movie? Natasha, have you watched it? How far have you?
It's on my list. I haven't watched it yet, but I heard a lot of good things.
Yeah. Have you heard of Hans Zimmer, the music producer for movies like Lord of the Rings, Dune? So he's a legendary music composer, and I was watching his interview where he said in music industry everything has changed in the last 30-40 years except one thing. And if I were to ask you what would that be, can you take a guess? Natasha, Mutahir, Kafa. What has stayed the same in the music industry for the last 30-40 years? क्योंकि इंस्ट्रूमेंट चेंज हो गए, आपके इक्विपमेंट चेंज हो गए टू हियर दैट म्यूजिक, बड़ी सारी आपकी इनोवेशन आई है, बट वन थिंग हैज स्टेड द सेम थ्रू आउट द सेंचुरीज इन म्यूजिक.
No idea. क्या है?
Lyricism has changed. If you listen to music जो आज का है, and if you listen to music जो 20 साल पहले था, you'll feel कि lyrics have changed significantly. Now you can have songs literally with one word. I'm not sure आपने रिहाना का वर्क सुना है, but you can literally, the love for music is one part of it, but the way you create music has changed a lot. I think the one element that has stayed the same is the human voice, and it's going to stay the same regardless of what you do, regardless of how you create music, because that is the core fundamental part of that music journey or that music experience. Similarly, for any marketing campaign, for any message that you want to get across, the art of storytelling has stayed the same. So for example, आज से 20 साल पहले शायद आपके पास Facebook ads नहीं थे, शायद Google ads भी इतने efficient नहीं थे, but the art of storytelling has stayed the same. लोग पहले newspaper पे ad चलाते थे, 30 साल पहले शायद लोग website भी नहीं बनाते थे. Now you make websites, now you make Facebook ads. I don't see personally, जो मेरा thought process, I don't see this as an end. Usually I see this as a medium to an end. And आपका हमेशा storytelling होता है. It's always about that story that you want to convey. Even if you see SEO, even if you see Google search, you see it gives you a small story. So आपका एक title आ रहा होता है top पे, then उसके नीचे 160 word की एक short story आ रही है. And if that story is compelling enough, you click on that link. And if it's not, then you don't click on that link. So the art of storytelling has stayed the same. Usually, at least जब हम इंटरव्यू करते हैं for our company, we feel people are too focused on the tools कि मुझे Facebook का एड्स मैनेजर बहुत अच्छा यूज करना आता है, मुझे Google का एड्स मैनेजर बहुत अच्छा यूज करना आता है. But my idea is कि 5-6 साल पहले ये बिल्कुल डिफरेंट था, 5-6 साल बाद ये बिल्कुल डिफरेंट था. If you build your whole personality around that one tool, or if you build your whole expertise around that one tool, then it's a very short-term strategy. Because in long run, the fundamentals are always going to stay the same. Newspaper से लेके TVC से लेके, you're always trying to tell a story, and you just have to ask the question, am I telling a good enough story? Am I telling a compelling enough story or not? And if you are not, regardless of what medium you choose, regardless of if you have that content on the website or on Facebook ads, it will be soulless because you don't have that storytelling behind it. I hope I connected the dots in a meaningful way there. Anything that you guys want to ask about storytelling or any examples that you guys have in mind, or maybe I can give a few examples.
Yeah, so Hammad, this is from all of the startups, right? So we have startups at different stages here from different industries. For example,
Yeah.
we have one who's making a metaverse game, which is very popular with the global market, not so much
Yeah.
in Pakistan because the hardware itself is expensive. And then on the other end, we have a social enterprise that's
Yeah.
been working on menstrual and sexual reproductive health. So the marketing and branding strategies for both are vastly different.
Yeah.
The one thing they both have in common is that they have been doing great work, but nobody knows about it because their marketing strategy, their marketing efforts have been a little, slow to come.
Yeah.
How do these businesses decide what is the perfect brand strategy for them? Like, is it really necessary to outsource this to an agency or to another individual, or do the founders need to work among themselves and first decide what the voice for the brand is going to be and then go forward from there?
My idea is to start with, are you telling a compelling enough story? Because you can be a great founder or a great communicator, but are you telling a good enough story? So just to give you an idea, I started this hobby project 2 to 3 years ago, where I just wanted to show people prices for most of the items that's available online. And I just went to Daraz and 99 other e-commerce stores, scaled those stores, made it in a way where it tells you कि Daraz पे iPhone इतने का मिल रहा है, iShopping पे इतने का मिल रहा है, Telemart पे इतने का मिल रहा है. And I spent all that effort on SEO. Now we serve 1.2 million users just by SEO alone. So if you go on Google right now and if you search for, let's say, PlayStation 5 price in Pakistan or AC price in Pakistan, you see us ranking or even outcompeting Daraz and other stores, and we rank for over 10,000 keywords. My idea was, am I telling a good enough story in terms of जब कोई Google पे सर्च करता है तो पहले क्या होता था, if I go to Google and if I search for iPhone price in Pakistan, usually you'll have websites जिन पे डिस्क्रिप्शन आ रही है आईफोन की, लेकिन एक टेबल के अंदर एक प्राइस लिखी हुई है, आपका वो इंटेंट फुलफिल नहीं हो रहा. I just focused on telling the story on SEO, and now we serve 1.2 million users there. Same with I think for your companies जो NSE में incubate करी है, hiring people obviously can help, hiring external consultants can help, maybe having the right strategy can help, but generally you have to ask, are you targeting the right audience? Maybe आपके 1000 followers हो LinkedIn के ऊपर, but वो सारे relevant लोग हो, so it can be a success instead of having 1 million followers जो शायद relevant ना हो. So it's more about building that strategy, and then it has to come from a founder, क्योंकि generally as an agency or as someone जो external party है, they pretend to care, but people usually try to focus on optimizing a few KPIs, but the vision has to come or the story has to come from the founders. That I would recommend they sit between themselves and then they figure out how do we position it, how do we make it consistent, and then build a strategy around it, and maybe get help when they feel they need expertise in running ads, or maybe they want more people to join the cause. Zasha, does this answer your question?
Yes, it does. Do we have any questions from the audience at this part?
I guess I'll move to the next slide. Yeah. Then the last part of this sales framework is delivery, and this is exactly what we were talking about. How do you deliver that message is also very important, and where do you deliver that message is also very important. For example, when you run ads for an e-commerce store on TikTok, your average product size or average product price is generally half of what you get on Google search. Just because you have a very different audience there. I'll give another example, which may not be the right example, but pre-World War, pre-Second World War, I think जब आपका early Nazi era का rise था, there was a chief propaganda officer, Goebbels, and he wanted to influence people to join the cause. And he realized a newspaper and the current mediums that we have to reach those people is too inefficient क्योंकि वो message convey नहीं होता. And what he did, he found financiers and then distributed radios to cities like Berlin because he felt that this is more immersive to convey that propaganda. May not be the right example, but this shows you that the way you deliver your message and the medium that you deliver your message through is also super important. So if you crack these three elements, which sound simple, super simple, and if you crack these three elements, I think any sales framework will work for you. Are you guys working on or using any sales framework at NIC or how has your journey been or do you guys focus on sales funnel or how do you actually run your campaigns?
So we don't actually focus on sales funnel, and a lot of our startups are at the building stage right now. They're building their MVPs and everything. And the few of the more established ones, they already have like Mixiel, which has a game. So the funny thing about them is they have had a very good revenue stream, and they have spent $0 on marketing. All of their sales and everything has come from SEO marketing, and that too not done by them. So someone picked up this game, and those listicles like top 10 cricket games you must try. Yeah. So and it took off from there.
Yeah.
So yeah, they're also a very interesting case study in how sometimes even when you do nothing, you can still you get good results if your product is good.
Exactly. This is the whole idea. If you hit the right audience with the right message and deliver it correctly, I think it generally works. Regardless if you spend money or not. Okay. I think you must have noticed there is this mindset that I'll spend X money on ads and somehow magically I'll get Y results. And this generally does not help or X does not directly translate to Y. क्योंकि आप पैसे लगाते रहोगे. I've seen a lot of brands जिन्होंने बहुत पैसा लगाया है. Maybe कुछ likes भी आ गए, कुछ followers भी आ गए, but अगर वो relevant नहीं है, अगर उससे sales नहीं आ रही, तो you are just focusing on the wrong thing. Then,
do you think there is also this customer mindset, like if a brand is displaying too many ads, they automatically think the product must not be too good if they're having to spend so much on making people like and putting it in people's faces all the time?
I think this is more about your definition of too many. So just to give you an idea, we did a project for one of the most expensive real estate properties in Ahmedabad. And then when we were running ads, what we did, हमने सुबह शाम उनको Facebook और YouTube पे वही ad दिखाया. And we wanted to make sure कि वो तंग आ जाए उस ad से, but at least they'll have that connection के next time when they go outside, उनको होगा या next time when they see an ad, वो brand की recognition create की. And we focused on a very small elite class. तो हमारी ad की cost भी इतनी ज़्यादा नहीं थी, but we made sure कि we get our message across. There's also an element of brand fatigue. For example, with these Khata apps, if you see all of them have hit 5 million downloads, इतने आपके पास किराना stores नहीं है पाकिस्तान. So you, according to Bureau of Stats, I think 8 lakh किराना stores हैं आपके पास और आपके 5 million downloads हैं. Now, regardless of how many ads you run, you can't get more downloads. And if you are getting those downloads, वो शायद relevant नहीं है, वो useful नहीं है. So there's also this concept of diminishing return where you can spend as much money as you like, but you might not get results that you are hoping for. क्योंकि लोग तो limited ही हैं, लोग तो आपके पास infinite नहीं है, लोग VC money के हिसाब से तो नहीं चल रहे हैं. या अगर मैं beauty product बेच रहा हूँ तो there are only a few people जो online beauty product buy करते हैं. It can be 1 million, 2 million, 3 million. But it can't be 100 million, 200 million क्योंकि इतने लोग ही नहीं है regardless of how much money I spend, वो शायद it may not be that relevant.
So do you think like with YouTube, do you think all the ads that come before videos, are they doing the opposite of what they aim to do with the audiences? Because I don't think nobody watches that itni diligently, and people do get really annoyed by that. So do you think that is the right platform for these brands to be putting their ads on?
I mean, if the goal is to create brand awareness, for example, have you used OctaFX?
No,
What do you know about
despite
OctaFX?
all their incessant
But you
marketing.
know about OctaFX,
Yeah.
and the idea was to maybe create that brand awareness, which they successfully did. Now I can't tell you for sure कि did it convert, did it make them money? But Pakistan का challenge ये भी है कि you have very few advertisers, so literally I can pay pennies to show you ads. मैं example दे रहा था. If you compare it with the US, वहां आपका $3 का CPC है, यहाँ $1 या $2 का CPC है. So advertising बहुत cheap है, and you have a big enough market और big enough audience कि मैं randomly भी अगर throw करते रहूंगा, वो shotgun वाली approach है कि मैं randomly भी fire करता रहूंगा, I might hit something. मैं अगर 1000 लोगों को दिखा रहा हूँ at a cost of, जो मैं US में एक बंदे को दिखाता हूँ, तो 1000 में से 10 तो convert हो ही जाएंगे. So Pakistan में this strategy works. As you grow and as this industry matures, you'll see less and less of these ads. If you go to US, you will see there is a lot of variation in ads. So अगर आपने बेडिंग का आपको एक ऐड आ रहा है तो आप बेडिंग की प्रोडक्ट देख रहे होगे या बेडिंग की वीडियो देख रहे होगे. आप घर पे बैठे हुए जो है वो मे बी कोई हिस्ट्री की डॉक्यूमेंट्री देख रहे हो तो आपको ऑक्टाफेक्स का ऐड नहीं आ रहा क्योंकि that's not relevant to you at that point. But since advertising is so cheap, you just try to spend as much money as possible to show as many ads, and then you sometimes get good results. But usually, just to give you an idea, have you seen the ads जिसमें वो games आ रहे होते हैं, random games के ad आ रहे होते हैं, हर बार different आ रहे होते हैं.
Those ads which we have to play in order to get the ad to go away.
Exactly. But if you download those games, you'll realize कि वो games वो होते भी नहीं जो ad आ रहे होते.
I know I have been a victim of that quite a few times, but I think they're a good example of letting people try it. They're scam, वो अलग बात है, but I think they're a very good marketing strategy.
But usually होता क्या है? Let's say you are a game developer, आप Web 3.0 का कोई game बना रहे हैं and you want to raise funds, ठीक है? You'll go to these agencies and you'll say कि I need X number of downloads, I need X audience. They'll make as many random ads for you as possible जिसके game से कोई लेना देना नहीं. And then लोग जाके वो देखेंगे and there are people जिनको वो game समझ भी आता है और वो जाके download भी करते हैं. And then they get disappointed, but at least you hit that number कि मेरा ऐप का डाउनलोड आ गया. So everybody is making money. They can go to their VCs and say कि हमारे बहुत सारे डाउनलोड्स आए थे, डिस्पाइट कि हमारे अनइंस्टॉल रेट क्या है, बट हमारे डाउनलोड्स मिलियंस में है. एडवर्टाइजर्स आर गोइंग टू मेक मनी क्योंकि दे डोंट केयर कि क्या ऐड आ रहा है क्या नहीं आ रहा. So this whole industry is messed up because the cost of advertisement is so cheap that you can literally show anything and then someone might download it and someone might actually start using it. मुझे बड़ा फनी लगता है, आप कभी गूगल मैप पे सर्च करेंगी तो कराची जेल के ऊपर भी किसी ने गूगल पे रिव्यूज डाले में 10-15 लोगों ने कि वेरी गुड फूड एंड ये. तो in Pakistan or in high population countries, 1 rupee per CPC is nothing, and you can literally show any ads that you want. But this will phase out eventually once we have enough advertisers.
So what do you think the most relevant platform for customer acquisition is going to be now?
For the startup especially, कि मुझे भी solve करना था कि how startup can identify के उनको CBC पे जाना चाहिए या random ads की तरफ जाना चाहिए, कहाँ पैसे भी ज़्यादा बच सकते हैं.
मैं आपको बताता हूँ, मेरे लिए बड़ा important होता है कि आप right KPI सेट करो. So I've worked with e-commerce companies जिनका goal KPI होता है हमने number of users बढ़ाना है. And I'm like यार मैं 10 million user ले आऊंगा, buy कोई नहीं कर रहा तो फायदा क्या है? आपके overheads बढ़े to manage that traffic. But अगर आपका right KPI hit नहीं हो रहा तो regardless of which platform you choose, मैं example देता हूँ. If I had a KPI at Bag Alley कि मैंने number of users बढ़ाने हैं just to show to my VCs. Wrong KPI, but if I want to increase it, मैं जाके literally Pirate Bay पे और torrent websites पे ad चलाना शुरू कर दूंगा, जहां वो pop-up में मेरी website खोल देगा and eventually in similar web my website will look like कि हम तो बड़े users serve कर रहे हैं, but उसका फायदा क्या है? उसका फायदा शायद numbers दिखाने में हो रहा है, but essentially business को कोई फायदा नहीं हो रहा. My idea generally is you pick the right KPI. So for example, if you are an e-commerce store, your KPI should be revenue and then overheads to actually process those orders. And if you find the right customer acquisition cost, maybe आप Google Ads के ऊपर ही बहुत थोड़े से ad दिखा रहे हो, बहुत ज्यादा पैसे पे आपका CPC ₹1 की जगह ₹100 आ रहा हो, but if you are making money, this is the right way to go about it. Instead of just picking one platform, because like I said, platforms are just means to an end. You want to focus on an end, not on the means, because these means will change. It can be SEO, it can be Google search, it can be Facebook, but you want to focus more on the end side of things. And then you can figure out कि कहाँ से मेरा सबसे ज़्यादा revenue आ रहा है. And जो सवाल पहले भी था कि which is the right KPI, and KPI ही जो है ना वो आपका actually drive करेगा कि आपकी campaign कैसे चले. Give me an example of a company जहाँ हम maybe we can figure out the right KPI.
अच्छा, हमारे पास हमारे स्टार्टअप्स में अली मौजूद है. अगर अली आप अपना शेयर करना चाहो या साजिद आप अपना शेयर करना चाहो तो अच्छा है. चले अली भाई, आप हाल में चैनल उसका एडवाइस देते हैं आप लोग.
मैं आपको बताता हूँ, there are smarter ways to go about actually maybe hitting those goals. मैं example देता हूँ आपको, और बड़ी unconventional सी मैं आपको example देता हूँ, which we worked with the company and then we built a strategy around it. Let's say कहां you run a software as service company जो software बेच रही है companies, ठीक है, and I tell you कि मुझे ये बेचना है, बड़े limited लोग हैं जो डील करते हैं let's say sales and marketing के अंदर, और बड़ी एक लिमिटेड इंडस्ट्री के अंदर मैंने काम करना है. कन्वेंशनल तरीका ये है कि मैं फेसबुक पे जाऊं, मैं लिंक्डइन पे जाऊं, मैं उनको मैसेज करूं, सर डू यू वांट टू यूज आवर प्रोडक्ट. यू नो कि मैसेज आपको भी दिन में 100 आते हैं, मुझे भी आता है, इट्स नॉट नेवर गोइंग टू वर्क आउट. व्हाट वी डिड, वी built an unconventional strategy where we went to these sales guys and we said we want to hire you as consultant, ठीक है, we'll pay you $100 per hour and we have a client जो which is looking at our service, but we want you to actually work with us and then present it to a client, so it brings credibility कि हाँ आप you are pitching it, you have that credibility and it will help our sale. In reality जिस client को वो pitch करे, that's also our own guy जो decoy, ठीक है. And होगा ये कि जब मैं आपको कहूंगा तो सबसे पहले तो आपके माइंड में चलेगा कि अगर मुझे कोई पर आवर $100 पे कर रहा है, तो आपके माइंड में चलेगा कि वो $100 पर आवर पे कर रहा है, दिन में 8 घंटे होते हैं, $800 पर डे में कमा रहा हूँ, महीने के जो है मैं $8000 कमाऊंगा, नहीं 10 दिन के मैं $8000 कमाऊंगा, और जो है वो मेरे ख्याल में महीने के जो है वो मैं $24,000 कमाऊंगा. आपका एक एंटाइटलमेंट ईगो को मैंने बड़ा डिफरेंटली हेड किया है, ऐसा ही है, एंड यू विल फील गुड कि यार मुझे कोई इतना पे कर रहा है. इन रियलिटी मैं सिर्फ आपको $100 पे करूं, which is somewhere around 20 पैसा for a lead, which is high. बट जब आप जाओगे किसी को सेल करना है तो पहले आपको भी बिलीव करना पड़ेगा कि ये प्रोडक्ट अच्छी है, इस प्रोडक्ट के अंदर है, एंड देन यू हैव टू कम अप विद रीजन. एसेंशियली आई एम सेलिंग यू द प्रोडक्ट by making it look like you are selling the product. Since you have to sell that product, in your head you will start coming up with reasons कि हाँ ये भी तो है इसमें, ये भी तो अच्छा है, ये भी तो अच्छा है, ये भी तो मैं कर सकता हूँ, ये चीज भी तो अच्छी है. So मेरी cost of user acquisition बहुत ज्यादा है, but I have bypassed that system जो आपके माइंड में चल रहा था कि इनके ऐप में ये फीचर है कि नहीं है, इनका सॉफ्टवेयर मेरे लिए ये करेगा या नहीं करेगा. Now you are my salesman and you are going to then pitch it to your own company and maybe use it, and without saying it I've made sure कि आपको में हो जाए कि प्रोडक्ट अच्छी है, शायद प्रोडक्ट अच्छी ना हो, Will that work? What do you think about a strategy like this?
डेफिनेटली अगर ये ऑप्शन भी अच्छी है कि इस तरह से भी आप ज्यादा इंगेज कर सकते हो लोगों को।
एंड आप बड़ा कन्विंस नहीं कर रहे हो ना, क्योंकि आप यू आर नॉट रियलाइजिंग आप अगले बंदे को बेच रहे हो, लेकिन एसेंशियली पहले आप खुद बाय कर रहे हो उसको, तभी आप अगले को बेच रहे हो। आप and when I pitch it to you, you are more likely to buy. So this is a high cost strategy, but I can never achieve same results from Google Ad, क्योंकि आप Google Ad पे जाके कभी आपको ख्वाब में वो सॉफ्टवेयर नहीं आएगा, या आपको कभी शायद उसकी नीड ना हो. There are also interesting or different approaches to selling softwares where you have to sell it like a credit card. अगर आप यूएस में या कनाडा में क्रेडिट कार्ड बेचते हैं, हाई एंड क्रेडिट कार्ड्स, आपके पास एक बजट होता है लेट्स से $1000 का, जिसमें आप लोगों को लेके जाते हैं डिनर्स पे. पाकिस्तान में जो सॉफ्टवेयर बिकता है वो इस तरह बिकता है कि आपकी कनेक्शंस किसके साथ हैं, आपकी दोस्तियां किसके साथ हैं, प्रोक्योरमेंट मैनेजर जो है उसके पास आईटी का बजट कितना है, देन एक्चुअल मेरिट. This is why I said, are you solving the right problem? Are you focusing on the right audience? And then you build a strategy around it instead of focusing on कि अच्छा मैं Google पे ad चला लूँगा, मैं Facebook पे ad चला लूँगा, मैं TikTok पे ad चला लूँगा. May not be the right way, but in terms of hitting those KPIs, you have to be a little unconventional and then focus more on reaching those goals than how you get there. Does it make sense?
It makes a lot. So I have one last question. It's more to do with the pricing side, but I think that's relevant too. So a lot of these new companies and startups, and when they rely on promo codes, and not just for transportation and mobility, for any business that you might find, for example, like Social Champ or something, they're giving out promo codes, use it for free for the first 3 months and everything. So do you think that is a good strategy? Because, or if इस तरह से होता है कि once the 3 months are up, you move on to another free service, unless you think you have the service is really working for you, then only then you pay for it. So even with ride-hailing startups, I think a lot of them are interchangeable फिलहाल तो कि भाई जिस पे ज़्यादा पैसे बच रहे हैं. It's more about where you save money and not about the actual brand experience itself.
Exactly. So जो आपकी राइड हेलिंग सर्विस वर्क करती है राइट नाउ, इट वर्क्स मोर लाइक अ कमोडिटी प्ले. जो आपको सस्ते में ले जाएगा, आई थिंक लोगों का एक परसेप्शन ये है कि ऑल ऑफ दीस सर्विसेज आर इक्वली बैड. सो इन ड्राइवर वाला भी आके मुझे तंग करेगा और गरीब वाला भी मुझे आके तंग करेगा, और कभी दोनों तंग नहीं करेंगे. बट इट्स मोर अबाउट अ कमोडिटी प्ले. सो instead of focusing on building brand, maybe you can spend that money on the discounts like you said. Because brand building takes a lot of money, and then you put that money in discounts and people are going to use that. So this is a good strategy where you compete on price. Also, if you see the fact that jo discounts and promo code and trial wala hota hai, I think this has been trial and tested multiple times. For example, LinkedIn ke upar, when you go and it gives you first month for free. Then when you try to cancel it, they say कि अच्छा ठीक है आप नहीं जाओ, हम आपको 3 महीने जो है ना वो 25% के ऊपर वो करेंगे, 75% डिस्काउंट दे देंगे. Even then most of the people cancel it after that 3-month period. So आप 4 महीने यूज करते हो, then you're like नहीं अब बहुत महंगा हो रहा है, अगर मैंने रिक्रूटर लाइट लेना है तो 24,000 का है. But essentially you will realize over time you have built that habit कि you have private browsing, you have that premium badge, you have a lot of those features जो आपको शायद चाहिए. And once you have that habit, you may not want to pay, but now that's part of your habit, that's necessary for you. You may want to use it instead of them saying कि नहीं आपने पूरे पैसे देने हैं, या वो सारे पैसा एड्स पे चला दें कि हमारी सर्विस क्यों इतनी अच्छी है. You can never replace it with first hand experience, but then you have to have that confidence in your product. It's going to stick. अगर आपकी प्रोडक्ट ही इतनी अच्छी नहीं है and you are giving discounts and then you are maybe doing promo codes, so फिर it's not going to work out. You have to find that right balance, but उसका जो first element होता है वो होता है कि you establish your product is good enough, people are going to stick, and then you take that marketing budget. क्योंकि अगर मैं गूगल पे भी ऐड चलाऊंगा, फेसबुक में कॉस्ट तो उतनी आ रही है, so I might pass that as discount to my end customer, and then they are more likely to use.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So do we have any questions from the audience? I think we answered all the questions.
So my idea is, if you build any campaign, have a good enough fail and success criteria. Because generally, at least Pakistan, if you go to these rating agencies, इनका फेल और सक्सेस का क्राइटेरिया इतना इम्पोर्टेंट नहीं होता. So if you are going to fail, at least fail fast, so you know कि क्या वर्क कर रहा है और क्या नहीं वर्क कर रहा. But set those goals before starting a campaign. Then just trying to move around and then do things and halfway आपको हो रहा है कि अच्छा ठीक है इतनी मेरी कॉस्ट आ रही है. At least have that criteria, have that mindset. Instead of having a 6-month campaign, maybe you do it for 1 month. Spend all that money, but in that 1 month you learn कि क्या वर्क करता है क्या नहीं करता. You might spend the same money, but in terms of time, you will save a lot of time on it. So have that fail quickly or fail as fast as possible strategy. Instead of then prolonging it कि 6 महीने में ऐड चला के देखूंगा, 1 महीने में इसलिए शायद अच्छे नहीं चले क्योंकि शायद मेरा ऐड अच्छे नहीं थे. Go with a campaign approach, go with short term goals, and once you have those short term goals, then you start focusing on longer term goals. Just to give you an idea, maybe आप के NIC में startups होंगे जो Google पे आज SEO पे focus कर रहे होंगे, which makes sense क्योंकि cost of आपकी जो है वो acquisition zero है. But SEO takes 6 to 8 months to actually mature. क्या मेरे पास 6 to 8 months है to figure out कि क्या work कर रहा है क्या नहीं कर रहा. What we did, हमने e-commerce companies को कहा आप SEO को बिल्कुल भूल जाओ. You start running Google ads for search, and then you see which keywords are the most converting keywords. So maybe green AC के ऊपर आके कोई नहीं खरीद रहा, लेकिन जब कोई बंदा green AC प्राइस इन पाकिस्तान लिखता है तो he's more likely to convert. Now instead of spending that 6 months trying to optimize for the keyword green AC, I might spend that time on building a long term strategy कि आज मैं through SEM ये traffic ला रहा हूँ. Over time I'll make it more organic and I'll offset it, but I'll get that result today instead of waiting for 8 months to get those results and then figuring out कि अच्छा मैंने तो गलत कीवर्ड पे ऑप्टिमाइज कर दिया और ये कीवर्ड पे मैं नंबर 1 रैंक तो कर रहा हूँ लेकिन सर्च ही कोई नहीं कर रहा. ये लोग जो सर्च करते हैं वो आके बाय नहीं करते हैं. Just to give you an idea, mobile phones के ऊपर you have over 30 to 40 million searches on a monthly basis. Do you think 30-40 million mobile phones लोग ऑनलाइन बाय कर रहे हैं हर मंथ? एग्जैक्टली क्योंकि लोग सर्चेस तो कर रहे हैं बट क्या वो बाय कर रहे हैं. सो आज मैं जाके अगर आईफोन के ऊपर ऑप्टिमाइज कर देता हूँ और मैं आईफोन बेच रहा हूँ, कोई सेंस नहीं बनता क्योंकि कंपटीशन इतना टफ है मोबाइल फोन इंडस्ट्री के अंदर एसईओ के ऊपर. इट विल टेक मी एटलीस्ट 2 years टू गेट टू पेज 1. 2 साल बाद आई रियलाइज कि अच्छा ठीक है इतना ट्रैफिक तो आ रहा है, मैं बाय नहीं कर रहा आके. Really, are you saying something?
No.
Ali was saying something. Then the last part. So या तो आप रेवेन्यू जनरेशन पे फोकस कर रहे होते हैं या आप एफिशिएंसीज बिल्ड कर रहे होते हैं. ये यूजुअली अनकूल होता है एंड यूजुअली देयर इज अ रीजन कि इंडस्ट्रीज में या काम जो हो रहा है वो मीडियोकर हो रहा होता है या एक वजह से हो रहा होता है. So you have to make sure कि you make it win-win for everyone. क्योंकि पाकिस्तान में या जनरली भी ग्लोबली एज अ स्टार्टअप फाउंडर आपके माइंड में होता है कि मैं पूरा प्रोसेस ही चेंज कर दूंगा. आज वो बंदा व्हाट्सएप पे डील करता है तो मैं उसको वेबसाइट पे ला के और एक लेंथी प्रोसेस दे दूंगा तो शायद वो यूज करेगा. जनरली एटलीस्ट इन आवर एक्सपीरियंस ये वर्क नहीं करता. आवर आइडिया है इसके आप कोशिश करते हैं कि आप बिहेवियर चेंज ना करें, आप व्हाट्सएप की इंटीग्रेशन कर दें और वेबसाइट से कनेक्ट कर दें. But to behavioral change, this requires a lot of effort. This requires a lot of money, a lot of training. A lot of these companies are trying to do or maybe make changes to behavior. At least, मैं आपको example देता हूँ. I've worked with at least a dozen of these companies जो SAP Oracle use करती है, but almost all of them are only using 10-20% of the features. बाकी कभी use नहीं कर रहे होते features. उनकी जरूरत भी नहीं है. क्योंकि उनका एक बिहेवियर बना हुआ है रिगार्डलेस ऑफ what software I use, वो उन्होंने आके वही feature use करना है, वही काम करना है जो वो करते आ रहे हैं. So instead of trying to force them कि नहीं आपने इस काम को इस तरह करना है, our approach is कि आप you make it win-win for everyone. You say कि अच्छा ठीक है आप इसी तरह करते रहो, but now we are bringing in innovation. आपके ही existing काम के अंदर हम कैसे enhance कर सकते हैं. Like I said, WhatsApp integration has worked really well for us. क्योंकि WhatsApp के ऊपर जो लोग ऑलरेडी WhatsApp पे हैं उनको वेबसाइट पे नहीं आना पड़ा, बट वो वेबसाइट से कनेक्टेड, eventually they'll come to website, eventually they'll come to your app. But day one के ऊपर मैं complex सी ऐप बना दूं, it makes no sense. Have you had any experiences with companies जो who are trying to force behavior change and then उनको challenges आ रहे हैं या कर सक रहे हैं नहीं कर सक रहे हैं? Any experiences on that?
I think a good example of that would be Kareem. So like Kareem's whole personality was, gimmicks. That was that played a huge part in making Kareem a big brand. Like, controversial ad campaigns, something was always happening. And then after Uber acquired Kareem, Uber was focused on functionality more. Like, we have to create a good user experience. It's a different thing that they failed at that, but the gimmick stopped. And then the service was already bad. So even with the gimmicks gone, Kareem kind of was at a stalemate. People were not interested. App experience was high bura, but having changed Kareem's whole identity, fun, preppy band से बिल्कुल like अब बहुत ही serious आपने उसको चीज कर दी है और बस basic functions पे focus कर रहा है. So that took away a lot, and Kareem basically lost its essence, I think. Because you forced them to change their whole brand identity.
I may have a different perspective on this. मेरा perspective होगा, if I ask you, if Kareem starts offering crazy discount, जैसे वो पहले कर रहे थे, ड्राइवर को आर्ट राइड के ऊपर को 5,000 10,000 का डिस्काउंट दे रहे थे. You as a customer आपको literally इतनी कोई lowest cost में कि जो आपको local auto रिक्शा है उससे भी कम प्राइस में आपको लेके आते हैं. If they start offering that, regardless of what kind of branding they have, they'll still get more customers. I mean, you are not going to use. अगर वो प्राइस 1,000 रुपए कर देते हैं लेकिन ब्रांडिंग कूल है, you might not use it. अगर वो प्राइस 200 रुपए कर देते हैं ब्रांडिंग अनकूल है, you are more likely to use that service.
No, but see, if they have a campaign, win an iPhone, take maximum number of rides, then you think, okay, even if it's 1,000 rupees, I might get the chance to win an iPhone, which is going to be way more than the cost of these rides I take.
Exactly, but then they're giving you a monetary incentive, then more about building brand. क्योंकि let's say वो बड़ी emotional story करते हैं, माहिरा खान को भी ले आते हैं, बड़ा crazy एक brand building exercise करते हैं, but rides still महंगी है. Are you going to use it?
अपना आप इसका ये भी एक देख सकते हैं कि करीम उबर ये जो थे स्टार्टअप्स, they were never going to be profitable in the first place. They are still not profitable in the first place right now. Sorry, even Spotify does not make any money. They are hardly making even. They are not even breaking even.
Yeah.
And yet they still are spending so much money into in these companies. How? Where that money coming from? Because all of these companies are betting on artificial intelligence, that self-driving cars will take over, and that's where they will be making most of the money. And that's a venture capitalists are most eager to invest in their startup in these companies. Sorry, not startups anymore. And also there's one thing I can't remember. Sorry. Okay, for now, this is my input for now.
Okay. Natasha, do you have another take on this? Because if you want, I can dive deep in. I have a completely different
You can
perspective.
answer this question. I think we have a very different view on the whole Kareem thing, because I worked at Kareem and we have had, even without promo, even with expense rent, as long as you were giving customers an incentive, any incentive, even a free, free bottle of Coke or something, or anything, 2 cupcakes or anything, people did ignore the price factor for a bit at least.
I think that's more about incentive. You're still giving a financial incentive, but in a different way. Okay? It can't be covered under brand building umbrella. At least that's my opinion. Once you remove that financial incentive, आपको cupcakes दे रहे हैं या वो आपको cheaper ads दे रहे हैं, you are less likely to use that. I'm not saying, I'm not diminishing the fact that you need a good brand building or brand strategy. I'm saying we overestimate that brand building part. And if you are in this space, you are more likely to compete on pricing than brand. And price is always going to be the winner for you. Brand plays an important role, but not that significant that they hope you to believe कि brand बड़ा important.
Yeah, but if you look at the general voice around, general buzz around Kareem right now, it's bad. It's consistently bad. Even at least with the gimmicks, there was some conversation going on. It was an equal mixture of, "Theek wow, Kareem is so bold for doing this campaign, so brave." And okay, on the other side, somebody got harassed. So the conversation kind of got lost in between. There was kind of mixed messaging. But right now, it's consistently bad because they have nothing else going on for them.
I agree. So let's take this as an example. You have a new entrant XYZ company, maybe Natasha ride hailing service, ठीक है? And you have Kareem and Natasha ride hailing service 200 रुपए में लेके जा रही है, Kareem आपको 800 रुपए में लेके जा रही है. Which one are you most likely to pick?
I think it's also in I think it depends from country to country, but in Pakistan, you wouldn't trust a US service because the user experience with all services is so bad. You might trust
Exactly.
yeah, बुरा है, but at least चलो we know they have a customer helpline. कभी कभार तो reply कर ही देगी वो.
I understand your point of view. थोड़ी सी brand recognition important है, but if you feel if Kareem was doing that well, आपके पास travel नहीं होती, आपके पास market में इतना space नहीं होता. So while Kareem has created that brand and that has helped them, I think in terms of service now, general consensus ये है कि all of them are equally bad. जिस दिन मुझे जो समझ आएगी, जो मुझे थोड़ा सा ज़्यादा incentive दे रही होगी, मैं वो use करूँगा. At least that's my opinion. Maybe too simplistic या too biased क्योंकि मैं शायद नहीं लेता हूँ ज़्यादा Kareem, but at least that's what I have seen. Brand building is an important part, but too overstated. I think ये brand वालों ने ही जो है ना brand teams ने ही ये बड़ा when you meet tech teams, they're like यार हम ही business हम ही चला रहे हैं, हम ही सब कुछ. When you meet brand teams, they're like दुनिया तो हमसे ही चल रही है. So I think as a function now we try to overestimate ourselves too much. There are a lot more moving parts. जो शायद you may only be a small cog in a big machine. So while brand is important, but that's still an important or a small enough part. So
Makes a lot of sense.
yeah. So my idea is if you're trying to maybe build efficiencies, the idea is that you base it on decision making, data-driven decision making. You do cost benefit analysis. But I've seen there's a case study on Pell in MIT where they teach you how not to implement an ERP. I think Pell spent millions of dollars on implementing that ERP and then it failed. So you have to figure out the amount of money that you are spending, the amount of effort that you are doing, is it worth the benefit that you are creating? So I generally feel that people don't think about these things first. They try to implement things, but everything has a cost and you have to factor that in. So this was a short understanding of business on how you can solve problems, and primarily you'll be solving one of these problems and what I have learned from the industry in the last decade or so. Any questions on this?
जी मेरा है अपना जिस तरह डेकेड्स कह रहा हूँ, जब से एडवर्टाइजमेंट स्टार्ट हुई है, जो ब्रांड्स होती हैं, कंपनियां जो अपने आप को ब्रांड बनाना चाहती हैं, वो टाइम्स के साथ अपनी क्या कहते हैं एक आइडेंटिटी बनाते हैं जिससे लोग उसको एसोसिएट करते हैं. मिसाल के तौर पे 80s में चल रहा था एक्शन, हर ब्रांड एक्शन के बारे में थी, चाहे वो लेडीज का हो कुछ भी हो. फिर 90s के अंदर आके पॉप हुआ, 2000s के अंदर आके ऑल अबाउट बीइंग डिजिटल. तो मैं ये जानना चाह रहा हूँ अभी जो मैंने नोटिस किया है वो है इट्स ऑल अबाउट फैमिली, लाइक हाउ वी कैन बी टुगेदरनेस के लिए फैमिली के लिए. तो मैं ये जानना चाह रहा हूँ कि क्या ये मेरी एनालिसिस सही है?
अच्छा,
I need a confirmation. I need a burden of proof.
मैं आपको बताता हूँ थोड़ा सा ये ट्रेंड्स आते हैं किस तरह हैं, ये चेंज किस तरह होते हैं। जिस तरह आपने पहले बीसी वाली बात की, प्राइमरीली दुनिया की जो प्रॉब्लम है ना उसमें ये है कि यू हैव अ लॉट ऑफ कैपिटल एंड वेरी लिटिल वैल्यू, ठीक है। एंड जिन लोगों के पास पैसा है, जो वीसीज हैं, इफ यू सी यूएस गवर्नमेंट प्रिंटिंग मनी like there's no tomorrow, you'll see that they have a lot of capital that they want to invest anything where they see value, and sometimes they create value out of thin air. So sometimes it's super manipulated in terms of कि शायद उस चीज की जरूरत नहीं है. Like you said, Uber might not make money, or Kareem might not make money, or Spotify may never make money, or Netflix may never make money. But this is not the point. The point is, are those VCs making money? Are the shareholders making money?
Shareholders will always make money. That's the point.
ठीक है. So it's never. I mean, अगर मैं और आप यहाँ बैठे हैं कराची और हैदराबाद में, we realize कि यार this company is not going to make money. Do you think कि जो लोग सिलिकॉन वैली में बैठे हुए हैं, जो लोग इन्वेस्ट कर रहे हैं बिजनेसेस के अंदर, जिनके इन्वेस्टिंग के 20 साल एक्सपीरियंस है, क्या उनको नहीं पता कि ये कंपनी कभी प्रॉफिट नहीं करेगी? I think everybody knows, but the idea is कि you only have limited value in this world, and you have a lot of capital, and you want to invest that capital जहां आपको लगता है कि maybe आज नहीं 10 साल बाद you are able to create some value. It can be AI, it can be around family, it can be around pop culture. These things change. मेरी recommendation ये होगी कि you don't focus on these changing trends too much, क्योंकि होता ये है कि eventually ये trend change हो जाएगा, and then you will be too focused on this one thing. As long as you
actually ये मेरा next सवाल होने वाला था कि बंदा किस तरह ट्रेंड्स पे फोकस करे, क्या वो करंट ट्रेंड्स पे फोकस करे अपने आप को ब्रांड बनाने के लिए, या फिर नेक्स्ट उसके ऊपर फोकस करे ट्रेंड पे ताकि वो उसके लिए रेडी हो, बजाय करंट में अपना इन्वेस्ट करके ज्यादा फायदा ना उठाने का।
मैं आपको बहुत सिंपल उसकी अंडरस्टैंडिंग देता हूँ. अगर आपके फंडामेंटल्स क्लियर है ना, इफ यू आर फोकसिंग ऑन द राइट फंडामेंटल्स, के मैं अगर ब्रांड बना रहा हूँ तो ब्रांड के अंदर 5-6 चीजें होती है. आप क्या सर्विस दे रहे हो, सेलियंस क्या है, इमेजरी क्या है, हाउ डू यू वांट पीपल टू परसीव योर ब्रांड, फीलिंग्स आप क्या अटैच करना चाहते हो अपने ब्रांड के साथ. देयर आर अ फ्यू थिंग्स जो आपके फंडामेंटल्स हैं. इफ यू हैव दोस फंडामेंटल्स सॉर्टेड, रिगार्डलेस ऑफ व्हाट ट्रेंड कम्स इन, जैसे मैं आपको एड्स की एग्जांपल दे रहा था, इफ यू हैव द फंडामेंटल ऑफ स्टोरी टेलिंग, अगर आप अच्छी कहानी सुना सकते हो ना, तो आप वो अखबार में भी 10 साल पहले 20 साल पहले सुना सकते थे. आप मे बी इससे पहले 50-60 साल पहले आप शायद रेडियो पे वो कहानी सुना रहे थे. आज शायद वही कहानी आप वेबसाइट पे सुना रहे हो किसी और तरीके से, फेसबुक ऐड के थ्रू सुना रहे हो, 10 साल बाद किसी और तरीके से सुना रहे होंगे. As long as you are a good storyteller, you will always find a medium to work with. But if you are focused too much on the medium, क्या मैं फेसबुक पे ऐड अच्छी चलाता हूँ, या शायद मैं यूट्यूब अच्छा कर लेता हूँ, या मुझे शायद एक चीज अच्छी आती है, वो चीज कल चेंज हो जाएगी. थिंग्स चेंज frequently. So my idea is to always focus on the fundamentals, and then you succeed in whatever technology or platform or trend that you pick.
Nice. Thank you.
Thank you, Ali. Any other questions? Natasha, do you have anything to add to this?
No. Does anybody have any more questions? I don't think so.
Awesome. So I think we have chat. Thank you, Varam. I think we had an interesting, insightful session. Feel free to drop me an email or message on LinkedIn if you have any further questions. We are always happy to help. I think one of the reasons that we started this company was we really wanted to do interesting work, meaningful, impactful work. And Alhamdulillah, we have been very blessed to work on things that we actually care about. So if you guys have any further questions, feel free to drop us an email or message, and then we'll get back to you as soon as possible.
Thank you so much, Hammad, for taking time out. I'm sure the startups and all other participants learned a lot.
Thank you so much, Natasha. Thank you, everyone. So Sajid, you can email me hammad@alphaventure.com. I'm leaving my email here. And I would be more than happy to actually connect with you guys and then help in any capacity that I can. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye-bye.